So what would be the first class that you would teach? I mean, how would you introduce this Heart's Lead to somebody? I mean, where would you start with somebody? Because
Well,
you can start anywhere on the clock with what we're doing,
yeah.
but where you're starting, it has to be some realization that somebody's screwed up.
Well, one of the first things that I would come up with is how much insight do I have in terms of my own socialization, and so, obviously the initial insights that I have, and is correlated to being in such a dysfunctional family element that what I did is I learned to be a hideout artist. I learned to withdraw, be asthmatic, and this and that. And then at a given age, I reached a point where I had a new sensitizing event in my life, and from then on, I completely changed my posture. That's when I went into the tough guy. But when we start talking about the changes that are going to go on, here I'm a pretty old person compared to most of you out there, and at the same time, what I have begun to find out in recent years, first off, it took me 5 years of working with myself to get past the tough guy part of me, so I learned to have tears. And that has a lot to do with Heart's Lead.
So are you saying that your tough guy period was not brought about by a need for survival on the streets, but a need to survive within your own heart?
Well, yeah, it was a matter of me coming out and doing something that I didn't know I was capable of doing when I was considered one on the nerd team. And when I came out and did these kind of heroic things, then I took a whole new posture in life. My posture now was tough guy and the hero in my community. And I'm going to tell you, one thing is to be shy and withdrawn and always hiding out and malingering. The other side is to become the tough guy hero and this and that, and both of them are off-centered.
So if you could identify a young person today, and you could identify in that person yourself of several years ago,
Yes.
how would you have initially approach that person, knowing that neither is centered? You've gone either side of the line. You've got the nerd that's always hiding,
Yeah.
and then you've got the tough guy that's out there and very popular, but neither is the right person. What's the first thing you would do with that person, knowing yourself in that person?
Well, I would be very affirming of that person to begin with. That doesn't mean I wouldn't challenge them in terms of certain behaviors and this and that, but I would be very affirming and begin to draw upon the positive side that's down inside of them that we all have, if we are affirmed in a very effective way by other people. Not smooching them, but, really saying, I can see that you're really clever in this area. And begin to provide a kind of empowerment from the outside in terms of my connection with this person, that they ultimately begin to feel their own personal power, and it doesn't have to be power and control, and it doesn't have to be hiding out and withdrawn.
So what you're saying is that first of all you identify where their strengths are and continue to build the strengths, empower them within those strengths, and then begin to address their weaknesses.
Yes.
And that's a pretty good management trait in terms of training leaders. In Zenger and Folkman's description and analogy of 5 tent poles, the first one being character, and the others we don't need to describe right now, but what they say is if you're in the 20th percentile in any one of those 5 character areas, don't initially try to improve that, because you would have to make a 100% improvement on that area, but only still be at 40%, which is way below the level to which people perceive you to be exceptional in that particular trait. They claim that it's better through empirical data to take something that is maybe at a 70th or 80th percentile and improve that. So improve your strength before you improve your weakness. And you concur from what you're saying with the child or the young person that's neither side of center, that you do the same thing.
Well, I would say that at the same time, our strengths overused can be a detriment, because, again, it can throw us into a position where we are always taking the same stance. And when we get to the point where we're more flexible, And that means that we're learning more about who we are down inside in terms of our true and essential nature. As we become more flexible, more, spontaneous, which is the inner child in us, when we become more flexible and resilient, that's a sign of our true intelligence. And that's a sign that we know how to use our strengths best, but also recognizing our weaknesses. Is that clear?
It is. Okay, so I know that I'm not centered. I don't know which side of center I am. Give me one task to do today, starting today, one task that will begin to draw me to center.
Well, it depends on, how you're out of balance.
Give me an example of a person out of balance, and then how that person...
Not being centered could be a person who's anxious and worrying too much and spending too much time in their things to do list until they get to the point where they may have tics or this and that, or their heart's pressured and this and that. One of the things that I would be working with an adult in that area, and as I've done with accountants before, is teaching that accountant that about every hour and a half they move from left brain to right brain, or they move from a place of logic and reason, this and that, and the accountants were dying like mad because they were continually over on this left brain side where they were problem solving night and day, and after the tax season, many of them, their health broke down. But if you could help an accountant to realize which side of the nostrils open, and they can figure out which is when they're into their right brain, and they take and go out and buy themselves a cup of coffee or look out the window and this and that and gaze at the hummingbirds for a while and this and that, and can realize that every hour and a half we shift back and forth from that, they're going to live longer, and they're also going to be more effective in terms of their problem solving.
So basically one of the things you're saying is schedule in the opposite of what you do most of the time. So take a 15-minute break and put some headphones in, close your door, don't take any phone calls, and listen to some music. Buy a book on art if you enjoy art. Right. Go out to an art gallery and stroll around it. Paint, draw, do something creative. Make some find an book on origami and make some swans or whatever it is. Something that requires you to switch from that left brain to the right brain for about 15 minutes periodically during the day. So that's a great first tip for everybody that's out there that is so left brain, and you need to have some therapeutic release from that activity. Thank you, Dr. Lloyd White. That is absolutely essential. When hearts lead, heads will follow.